And there we are. Welcome everyone to another OSR tabletop. Myself, DM Bloodworth, Richard, and I am joined today by Roger, and it's Roger Rebisz. Did I say that right? Or Rabbits or
Rebisz.
Rebisz. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's a Slavic name, right? It's
I'm used to it. Polish.
yeah, Polish.
Polish. Yeah.
Close
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So, but it's
Yeah.
great to have you on. And Roger, if you're not familiar, you should be familiar because I've been pushing for Central New York RPG Con now for quite a number of months. And Roger has been on before, but I wanted to give him an opportunity to talk a little bit about, because we're just about 90 days, actually 91 days to be exact, right? Yes, 91 days until Central New York RPG Con. So take it away, Roger.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. 90 days already. You're keeping better count than I am, I think. I'm just I just count the days. I'm trying to get everything done, But doing a convention here. So far everything's going good, A lot of planning and stuff on the back end.
Mhm.
You know how it goes, Um yeah, I see some people in the chat that I know.
Yeah.
So
I see Roger instant like
good.
the
Yeah.
video.
Yeah, Matt. Yeah, hey Matt. No, Matt's a great great DM. He's actually going to be running. I think we're in 2 of his games down in Mepicon in a couple weeks.
Oh yeah.
They're the first. It's like April 5th or whatever. I don't know. I think that's the
Yeah.
first weekend in April. But yeah, Matt's a great guy. So it's been a process, and just trying to get people amped up about it, and there seems to be a lot of hype out there. So we're excited about it.
Yeah. It's really good to hear. And I've been watching other channels like Tenkar brings it up every once in a while. And
Yeah.
I mean, you're very active on the various social media areas and everything. I see you here and there around. You were on Double D's channel as well, so Diversity and Dragons. So I see you there often, and it's really good just to see another convention propping up in within my driving distance, just to be perfectly
Right.
selfish about
Yeah.
it. It's like like 2.5 hour, 2.5 or just under 3 hours away from me. I think probably closer to 2.5, and so that to me is local. And
Sure.
only requires one overnight stay if I decide to stay into the second day. I got to play that kind of by ear. I'm looking at that. But otherwise, really looking forward to it. So it's another opportunity to get out there and to and to do some gaming that I really think is is the pinnacle of game mastery, in my opinion, is convention. Running at convention.
Sure.
Because you're introducing new players both to yourself and to whatever game you're running, most of the time. And and people are just so excited to be there and to experience other things as well. And so I think that's what's the real the real special thing about conventions. So let's lead right into right now. I know you've had the tabletop events up for a while now, and you get a sense that you're pretty much fully booked out for the game sessions being run.
We've got about I think there's about 25 or so events,
Conventions, yeah,
somewhere between
events, yeah.
20 and 30 events, yeah, that are
Mhm.
that are set up now. There's still some room for more, but
Okay.
and if we have to open up some more tables and stuff, we will. I know there was a couple people that were planning on running some more miniatures games, and
Okay.
I got to talk to them, and they're going to set that stuff up. And I had some issues with the back end of tabletop events to try and set some of that stuff up. Um,
Mhm.
it's tabletop events is great. I like it. But sometimes some of the stuff in their back end is seems more difficult than it should be to
Yeah, okay.
set up. But um,
Probably not as
it's
difficult
great
as
though.
OBS, right? OBS is a freaking
Right.
nightmare. I find OBS
So
like insanely difficult to deal with.
OBS is
Mhm.
wonderful once it's set up and working.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
it,
I'm like,
it's very open, but yeah, very difficult kind of to mess around with.
yeah.
Um,
So, hello, Teresa. Good to see you again. And here we have wonderful. If there'll be more turnout or less turnout of people with all the normies leaving. Where's the normies leaving to?
I don't, I don't,
Where are they leaving to? I have a feeling that they're coming to us. To
sure,
be honest with you, I think that I don't see, and I don't want to make this too much of a D&D 2024, 25, falling apart, but you see, I have my Shadow Dark shirt on, and
sure,
that is absolutely huge again, and I'm
yeah,
sure that it's going to run wild during this upcoming year of conventions and everything. So I think it's going to really really explode 2025, and that I believe is releasing by December of 2025, which means it's going to carry over into 2026 as well. So, yeah, I mean, so the normies are fleeing, and if the normies are fleeing anywhere, they're fleeing to the OSR and to independent gaming, which is
sure,
only a great thing, I think.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to push,
yeah,
I mean, I'm not trying to keep people out if they want to show up and play,
mm,
5e or
right.
5.5, 6, whatever we're calling it, um, but yeah, I think the OSR, kind of realm and all those games are where it's at, and that's and I think like you said, that's kind of obvious with looking at Shadow Dark and
Mhm.
where it's gone, and then and it obviously wasn't a fluke thing because she just has the current Kickstarter that is well over $1 million now. So
Yeah, I think it
I think
surpassed
it
the
just
first one
shows.
already. Yeah, it surpassed the
Yeah,
first one in the first day and a half.
yeah,
And I think it's going to, just keep on, exploding. So I think
yeah,
that'll probably push beyond what MCDM did. Matt Koval's thing was like
yeah,
5 million, and but that's not expected to actually deliver until like 2026 or possibly, yeah,
really.
around 2026. Yeah, it's going to be a while before that comes
Wow.
out. And I have a strong sense that she's hitting the iron while it's hot again, and
Yeah,
it's going to. I mean, the Kickstarter just started yesterday, and or the 11th, the 2 days ago,
yeah.
and it's coming out in December, which means that it's
That's amazing. I didn't
yeah,
even realize that
so
when
that's a
it was
very
coming
quick
out.
yeah, it's a very quick
Yeah,
turnaround on that. Troll Lord Games is releasing their first installment of the first three installments of
yeah,
Castle's Ajig, which all of that is pre-written, so that's gonna have a pretty quick turnaround as well. I believe that was a
yeah,
2025 release date as well. Um, but again, all they're redoing is they're not actually rewriting the adventures. They're just reformatting them,
sure.
modernizing them, because these
Hmm.
are new,
Yeah,
republications, of older stuff. So that should be really good to see. Um,
Yeah, I saw that they have
yeah,
that they've already have the second one kind of planned, or they've already mentioned it that um, what they're doing in a second Kickstarter for it. So,
yeah,
I'm interested to see where that goes.
where that goes. Yeah, so I'll be busy that day. A final boss got me scheduling. Oh, that's too bad. It would be nice to have seen you there, Teresa. Um, Scheduling is a bane of yeah, gaming. You know,
Yeah,
yeah, I
not
know.
not
I'm
with
only
that,
yeah,
not with that attitude, Ducato.
yeah,
You just got to make time.
yeah. You got to make time.
Tell your
Yeah,
job where to go and say,
yeah,
listen, this is important. You to turn it into corporate team building exercises, and then you can game while you're working. I think that's the thing.
yeah. That's not gonna. Should be free sometime in 2027. Yeah, that's not good. So the
Yeah,
Shadow campaign is really something. Kelsey is killing it. I love the art and graphic
yeah,
design and her stuff. Yeah, I mean it's really
yeah,
and to be honest with you, it's a fantastic convention game. And there's few games that I've played that I was like, oh my god, this is such a great convention game. So to put it into the same category from my own personal experience, Blade Runner is an awesome convention game. Running through those files. Case file
yeah,
number one is what I ran twice at conventions, and it's a phenomenal game for conventions. And I put Shadow Dark in that same category. Um, I played um, Weird Frontiers is
mm,
also an amazing convention game as long as the
definitely,
game master trims down the rules for that system, because you do have to heavily modify that for convention play and for that short play. But
sure,
it's one hell of a fun game to play. Um, I'm going to be running Deadlands for the first time, but I think Deadlands is going to have that same kind of vibe as Weird Frontiers, so it's going to be a
hmm,
lot of fun. And
sure,
Deadlands is already simplified over Weird Frontier, so
yeah, yeah,
it'll need less tweaking to do. Um, I'm
yeah,
I'm kind of back and forth, and I know your other friend that I met down in I'm back and forth on
yeah,
Fallout. You know,
yeah,
that I think is going to be a hard translation to convention play.
sure,
To be honest, I'm going to still bring it and still look to run it and
yeah,
everything, but
yeah,
that's going to be a really interesting thing to do. That's going to be my biggest challenge at your convention is to run that game system that
yeah,
really does have that just a real fast pace kind of thing that a
yeah,
convention game
yeah,
kind of needs, and still interesting enough mechanics to keep everybody engaged.
sure,
So it's going to be an interesting one. It's a great
yeah,
system for long campaigns, like home campaigns and everything.
hmm,
um I'm just hopefully I can, it'll just be on me to make it where it really runs well at a convention. I'm
sure,
pretty sure I can pull it off. Hopefully,
yeah.
but so I'm impressed
Yeah,
with.
like I said, I got like 3 people that are
Yeah,
excited about that,
yeah,
one of
yeah,
which you
yeah.
met, so
So yeah, no pressure, no pressure. Now
no
I'm
pressure,
definitely going to, I'm definitely going to, make it where it's a fun experience, and that's
Sure.
that's what I'm looking mostly for. So yeah, yeah, it's a nice. Well, both of us, I guess, as both of us have good collections behind us. I don't know who you were directing that to. Probably, Roger. I think you got
Oh,
me beat. I think you have me
oh
beat.
boy.
Um,
Yeah.
so but yeah, the collections are, nice to have, and I'm happy to say that at least 60% of my collection I've actually run. And that's
Yeah.
another whole challenge in the life of a gamer, right? Is to actually run mostly what is on your
Yeah.
shelf. I know sometimes we get the collector's bug, and we're just, oh, I just want it on my
Oh boy.
shelf.
Who
It's
does
like,
that?
yeah, it's
Who
like,
does that? I don't know.
but I've been
Uh,
trying to break away from that.
60%. I think if I were to run, I don't think I'm able to run 60%
Mm.
to get to that number of what's on my shelf. I think
Yeah.
I'll be long dead before I can get to 60% of what's on my shelf.
Well, you don't have to run it
So,
once to say that you've run it, So,
yeah,
and much of mine has been run, in the past. I'm not saying I'm going to get to 60% of my collection in the years I have going forward. It was like,
sure, sure.
I'm going back to when I
Um,
was, from 13 to, let's say, 13 to 19, when we played 6 days
yeah,
a week, every day
yeah,
after
sure.
school, and then most of the day Saturday. And we
Right.
mixed it up quite a bit too, playing, 3, 4 different games per week and
Sure,
everything. So
sure.
we were able to hammer out a lot of different game systems back then that I wouldn't be able to pull off now. I mean,
Yeah,
it was just,
yeah,
we didn't do homework back in the 80s. That wasn't a thing for us back in the 80s. It was like, we did
yeah,
homework in like the 30 minutes before school started at school, just before a classes started. But
yeah, yeah,
anyway,
sure.
so let's see.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully I can get through some of my want to playlist, I guess, at some point, but
Yeah,
yeah, being retired, I think that's the
yeah, yeah. I thought that was going to be the key, but I'm only semi-retired, so I still work like
yeah.
just 3 days a week. But it's like when I have to fill in for others and everything like that, it's like, all right, great, I'll fill in, but that always takes away a game day for me. It's like,
Sure,
I schedule
sure.
the game for that morning, and then I lose it. So
Yeah,
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 it's still scheduling is still the bane of gamers, even if you're semi-retired.
yeah,
Um, I would say many game systems have to be modified for convention play. Yeah, they do, because
sure.
convention play is a totally different animal, and um, I'm sure that, and I actually ask you, Roger. So, Roger, when you're setting up your convention and everything, um, what do you have to take into account, considering that reality that convention games need to be run differently?
Oh, as from a convention
Yeah, from a convention point of
organizer
view. Yeah,
standpoint, um, yeah, well, we're trying to do something. It's difficult because you don't know what you're gonna get. There's some people obviously that come to the table, that are obviously going to come to the table and they know the system and they know, maybe they know the DM and it's really easy for that stuff.
hmm
Um, you know, we're w- we're planning on having some people walking around and having people there, and just in case if people need help, I'm gonna have extra sets of dice, because people, sometimes people don't know or what, um, things like that. So, dice, pencils. I've got a thing for the Bic, the
yeah.
clicky
Oh, the
pencils.
pencils, yeah,
Um,
yeah, I love those things.
those. So I
Yeah,
mean, I'm definitely going to have a ton of those, a ton of
mhm,
dice, a ton of notepads and paper. Um, and I'm also one of those crazy index card guys. I got
yeah,
tons of index cards everywhere. So I plan on having all that stuff. And I mean that's all I used to run usually.
right,
But yeah, and I mean, hopefully, we can get people in and going. It usually, if you're a GM at a convention game, you usually know going into it. Obviously, like you're going to have people that sit down that aren't familiar with the system, that don't know,
right.
that maybe they see, oh, this is Fallout. I'm into Fallout, but I have no idea what this gaming
The
thing
game
is,
system is right, yeah,
yeah, and you kind of gotta step them through it, and I think that's
right.
all part of the convention experience. Um,
Yeah, just to see the breaking point, yeah.
so yeah,
Um, so on the point that, Roger just made, it's why you have to assume, that everyone coming to your table knows nothing about the system. And I found that even if the game system doesn't provide this already, I would hand them little cheat sheets on the very basic rules
yeah,
for the game, and that's it.
there you go.
Trim out anything else that's like really really complex. Like I said, with Weird Frontiers, I limited the character classes that they could play. So I took out most of the
Yeah.
magic. I only had like one, like the priest type, which was called like a sin eater.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I really tried to keep the magic down, because then you get into, because it's basically a DCC game at its core, and I didn't want to
Right.
get into
Right.
all of the the wild magic and those kinds of things. It already had the poker cards that you had to dish out every
You're
time
right.
someone fired a gun. So it was
Yep.
like, and then there was tokens, which the first time I ran it, I forgot to bring the tokens, so we were like kind of just
Oh
keeping
boy.
track of that on a
The
separate thing.
boons,
And
the boons and the banes and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. So
Yeah.
so this was, again, a learning curve with
Yeah.
it. But coming there, it's the second time that I ran it. I went there with some cheat sheets for the very basic rules. So
Yeah.
everybody got
Yeah.
this. I do the same thing with Shadow Dark. I do the same, which is a simple system. But again, you have to assume they know nothing about tabletop role playing as well. Let alone the game system that you're running. And when you do
Sure.
that, Teresa, when you do something like that, you kind of set that up, you're really setting yourself up for a success that you wouldn't have if you're not prepared. You know what I'm saying? So there's a difference between preparing and planning. You can't plan for a convention game. Too many variables that are just unknown to you. You don't know who's coming to
Right.
your table. You don't know how much they're going to know and everything. So you can't plan around it. The best thing you can do is prepare for it and be like, well, I'm going to have all these contingencies. What if the player doesn't have dice, like Roger was mentioning, or doesn't
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
something to write with, or doesn't have a notepad, doesn't have a character sheet, you know, um, you know,
Yeah.
and that's the other thing too, is like you really do have to balance whether or not you want to deal with pre-generated characters, which I do recommend, um,
Sure.
and then but also have some blank character sheets in case someone is really adamant on rolling up a character, which means that when
Yeah.
you're dealing with 3 or 4 hour time slots, you got to build in a half an hour,
Right. Right.
because it's not what your fastest player can create a character with. You have to plan on what would the slowest player be
Right.
in
Yeah.
creating a
Right.
character. So you always have to plan for the slowest and the
But some
slowest.
of that I think is on the system too. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of systems out there I think that you just can't feasibly. You mentioned Blade Runner and Shadow Dark, and like
Mhm.
the trying to do a Shadow Dark character at the table, like that shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes if you're slow,
Right.
but
Yeah.
like Blade Runner, like, forget it. I mean, I don't think you're
Yeah.
you're gonna be able to, because you gotta go
No.
through and pick all your things and
Yeah,
everything,
all
and
that stuff. No,
it's
Blade
just gonna
Runner,
take.
like I said, is a great convention game because you're
Yeah.
using the four pre-gen
Right.
characters and
Yeah, absolutely.
the whole adventure, and believe it or not, it's not railroady, but it is very
Yeah.
it's like a web, right?
They
And it's
did
like
they did a
a story.
fantastic
Yeah.
job
But you
with
have to
with
play
those
it with
box
those
sets.
characters. You have to play it with those
Right.
pre-gen. It
Right.
will not work, unless it's your home game. It's not
Yeah.
going to work if they're creating
Yeah.
characters at the table. It is so set for just
Yeah.
those four characters that's what you got. And it doesn't work with five players at the table either. It's
Right, you need
literally
4. Yeah, you
four
need
players.
4. You need
Yeah,
those 4 players in order to
yeah,
have the interaction and stuff, and you need some time too. From what I recall is they have a pretty big backstory for the characters that you kinda gotta read through, and then that gives you
yes,
connections to some of the other players and stuff instead of just sitting down and playing. So I think in that time where you'd spend, doing character creation or whatever, instead you're kinda saying, "Okay, I'm gonna read through this and see, what what my character who my character knows and where they know people from and what their attitudes are for certain things, and then you get a better idea from there."
here's a question. So does anyone have a favorite game to play
Yeah.
when at a convention? uh, I'll let you go
That's
with that one first,
that's
Roger.
oh boy, that's a great question.
Mhm,
And this so I personally, when I've ran, first I got to say it's kind of strange. I don't run a whole lot at
mhm.
conventions because I run all the time anyway. So
Yeah.
when I go to a convention, like that's my time to play because
Hmm.
I'm, and I enjoy running. I love it. But when I go to convention, usually I'm playing all the time. When I run a game, I like running like DCC or something that's just really out there. Even when I run games that aren't DCC,
Right.
I kind of try and inject that kind of gonzo,
Yeah.
crazy, anything can happen,
Hmm.
nature into it because it's a convention game, right? Or like who
Right.
it's a one shot. Who cares?
Yeah.
Throw yourself into the
Yeah.
burning circle or whatever, or try and do crazy stuff. You know how it is.
Yeah. Stick
So
your head in the yawning mouth, and nothing bad
yeah,
will happen to you. Yeah.
yeah, right. Stick your head in the yawning. That never gets old, and but but so yeah, spoilers for anybody.
Yeah.
Don't stick your head into a yawning mouth. Like
Yeah.
it might sound like, oh yeah, everybody knows that, but believe me,
No, they don't.
they don't, and people will stick their head in there. Anyway, uh spoilers for a dungeon that's 40 years old, but
Mm.
um but yeah, I think when I go to a convention, I like playing in the games of the people that are running first edition
Mhm.
or those early editions of the game. And I like to find like the people that have been doing it for years, like that's their jam, and they've been playing
Yeah.
it since it came out because they're so good at it. And I really love the older editions
Yeah.
of the game. I mean, obviously by the, my convention logo, the way I went with it and, everything, it's
Yeah.
obvious, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
There's
but
the
those
convention
guys are great.
logo. I
There you
mean,
go. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you don't get better than that. Honestly, you don't get better than that. It really does capture
Yeah.
what the conventions
And
like
it's,
to do.
And it's hard to find like I mean, I guess in the conventions that we go to, obviously there's always somebody running, first edition or like BX or things
Yeah.
like that. But out in, in I'll say in the normal world, right? Like,
Yeah.
nobody's running for not nobody, but first edition game is hard to find, like if you
I don't
wanted to
like,
play
yeah, like
fifth
a
edition,
local gaming
everybody's
shop
running
or
it.
something. Yeah. You're not going to find it
Right,
there
right.
unless the person sets it up to organize it, and they're showing up like twice a month or whatever, and it's their set game that they're running. But yeah, you're not
Sure.
going to walk in and just see a pop-up game of AD&D first edition
Yeah.
take place. Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah. And so that's the kind of thing I look for that I want to play in,
Mhm.
and I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that, and it's
Yeah.
and it's great. Um so
Oh, excuse
yeah,
me, that came out of nowhere.
yeah, it's really a good time.
Yeah, I'll answer that as well. Like when I'm going into a convention as a player, and even when I'm running games, I always look to see, well, who's the special guest that's running something, and I like to play in the
Yeah.
game of the game designer. So I've played in. The first time I did that, I played in Alan Hammock, who was running Ghost Tower of Inverness.
Mhm.
So I was like, awesome. That was a great game.
Yeah.
Just to experience it, from the guy who wrote the adventure, it's just an amazing
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
Um, Playing in Frank Metzner's game, phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Playing in anything that he was running, he wasn't running he was running the Frank Metzner system. It was just 2d6
Yeah.
the whole time. And,
Yeah.
11 player characters out of 16 died, and
Yeah.
that's what you're going there to
That's a
experience. Yeah.
classic Frank Menzer game. Yeah.
Um, Zeb Cook was running, and this is at the Philadelphia Area Game Expo
Mhm.
2, just this past January. Zeb Cook was running Oriental Adventures, and I had blast,
Yeah.
playing my character in there. My character was the only one that died in that too, so it was like, but just the blast. I fell for, how I died in that, is I fell for the, come warm yourself by the fire by some woman in a hut, right? It was like, yeah, I'll go in there. I was all game for it. It's like, I know
Yeah.
I know how this story ends, unless you're Conan, and I went in anyway.
Yeah.
And so my
Sure.
character dies in that situation. But it's so that was another one. I played in Jeff Talanian's Hyperborea game at ShireCon last
Yeah.
year, so I will always look to, I want to play in Joseph Block's game. He does a miniatures game that
He
I've missed
does.
twice now. So I want to definitely check out that miniatures game, that battle. It's a
Yeah.
battle of something. Um,
Yeah, he's
you know,
gonna run 2 sessions of that at, CNY.
yeah, so I'm gonna have to squeeze that in
Yeah.
somehow. I gotta see, I might have to change
Yeah.
my schedule a little bit with you so I can get into one of those games.
Yeah, whatever we gotta do.
Yeah,
Yeah, we were supposed to be in one of Talanian's games at this past page,
yeah,
and he couldn't make it. He had to bow out, but,
yeah. Yeah, so
uh
so that's what I usually look for. I look to see, is someone running their own game system, and
yeah, yeah,
that's what I look for. So if another person, I guess Greg Gillespie is going to be
yeah,
at Central New York,
yep.
and I'm assuming he's running Dragon Slayer, right?
I hope so, yeah.
Yeah. So, I might have to try to, check out one of his game
Yeah,
sessions as well. And pick up Dragon Slayer as well because I didn't pick it up yet. So I'm sure he'll bring some
yeah,
with him to sell there.
yep, yep,
So yeah, I try to get into, games that, really do interest me. And the other thing is I like to play games that I haven't played before,
sure.
so
Yeah,
that's another thing that I always look for. And so if you go to a convention, that's what my recommendation is: look for game systems that you've never seen before, never played before,
absolutely.
and it really is, one of the other really special things about convention play is that just that being available to you maybe for the first time, you've never seen it before,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
so
absolutely. It definitely trying out that stuff. And yeah, and like you said, getting into play with the creator of the game
yeah,
is definitely awesome because it gives you a different vision of the actual gameplay and whatnot because you get to see it from instead of someone else's interpretation, you have the direct thing. Yeah, pre-gens.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm not going to get into that. I know it's an inside joke, but
Oh, okay.
well, pre-gens and backup characters is like kind of an inside joke now. It's like there's you can't have backup characters, but a convention play, that's the other thing, and that's probably the biggest. I think one of the biggest stumbling blocks, and one that I still faced last year, was that when I had four player characters died in the second to last scene in the adventure.
Oh
And
boy.
so how the hell do I just bring, and there were seven player characters, so four out of the seven, died,
Yeah,
and the other three were not going to be able to handle the big boss at the end,
sure.
so I'm sitting there and I'm like, how do I wrap this thing? Like, how do I get them to come back in with four different characters just to go through, And so I just left them dead, and the three went in, and they saw that they were, I tried to give them every hint possible, you don't
Mhm.
think you can beat this thing, but try to just grab a hold of the prize and try to run out the door, and if you're really,
Yeah.
really lucky, you'll pull it off. And they were the first group to, after seven groups attempting to, they were the first group to actually get, the shard of Ymir, which,
Mhm.
the whole thing that the adventure was all about. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and then one of the players, not even one of the ones that died, one of the ones that survived and everything, came back at me, and it was like, "Oh, you had too many players die on, bogus rolls and blah blah blah." And I'm like, they were rolling. It was like, this is convention play, and
Yeah.
people do have an expectation that when you're playing in a convention game, especially when you're into hour three, that if their
Mhm.
characters die, they might not, they don't expect to just be brought back in for the last scene
Sure.
kind of thing
Sure.
either. So yeah, it's a dilemma. I would say it's certainly something that I would try to rethink and see, well, how could I do that a little bit differently. So getting back, to Teresa's original question, and original concern about, being nervous about running at a convention. There's still a learning curve. I mean, I've been running at conventions now since 2018, and 3 to 5 conventions a year, and running anywhere from 3 to 5 sessions per convention, and there's always going to be a learning curve, and
Yeah.
every situation is going to be different. Again, you're preparing for it, you're not planning for it, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
And I needed to be a little bit better prepared for that possibility of so many player characters dying in the second to last scene. How would I handle that? I think I have a better way of handling it now than I did then. So we'll
Sure.
see. Your convention will be the first one that, no, I'm sorry, AutoCon 3 will 4. AutoCon 4 in June 7th and 8th will be the
Oh,
first
okay.
time that I'm running that, and then yours will be the following weekend. So I got
Yeah.
I got
Yeah.
two
Back
conventions
to
back
back.
to back
Yeah.
weekends. Yeah. Um, yeah. So you played 4 different game systems at ShireCon, and it was great. So any upcoming games that people are excited to play? X-Crawl. The game came out not too long ago. I haven't heard of
Yeah.
X-Crawl.
That's
So
the XCC X Crawl Classics.
oh,
That's
that's from
Brendan
DCC's new
LaSalle's.
one, right?
That's the
Yeah.
DCC. It's like the future, like D&D in the future, and it turns into
I thought it was like Cyberpunk, right?
yeah,
Or
yeah, yeah. It's sort of
like
like
a
cyber. It's
like
everything's televised. It's like
oh,
televised dungeon crawls and whatnot.
let's see.
Um,
So
yeah, I got somewhere up. Where's my hand? One of these books here is I think it's that book right there. I think
yeah,
is the XCC book. I don't know. I can't.
yeah.
I'm trying to use the image of myself on the YouTube
Mm,
to look at my
mm,
book. So, but yeah, yeah,
yeah.
that's kind of cool. I kind of want to run some of that at some point, some one shots. Um, man,
Yeah, I'll take a look at it.
what else is coming out? That's I'm trying. Oh, I just got Neon Skies.
I've
I don't know
heard
if
of
you've.
that.
Yeah,
Heard of it. I'm not.
it's the guy that from Wylock's Armory, the crafting channel.
Yeah.
He did a cyberpunk game, and I just got that maybe last week. Um, so I'm definitely excited to play that. Um,
Speedrun Death. Is that a game?
Speedrun, yeah, I don't know what that is. Shadow
Right.
Dark 2, yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Um, I'm trying to think of what I got. I'm trying to look over at my books that came in. I know there's Amazing Adventures.
I've been
That's
running
not
that
really
now.
new,
It's
new.
my home game
Yeah,
is Amazing Adventures right now. So finally got that campaign
yeah.
started, and we just wrapped up session 3 Tuesday night.
Are you running like the classic, like the pulp kind of game
It's
with
kind
it?
of pulpy.
Or
It's really a mix of. It's like a mix of diesel punk and neuromancer and that kind of thing with
yeah,
a bit of eldritch horror thrown in,
right.
so it's a real mix up of everything set in my own,
Yeah,
very, I'm actually using the city map from Cyberpunk 2077. So I just snatched
oh,
the
okay.
city map from from the gaming sites. They like the wiki
Yeah,
site for Cyberpunk 2077,
yeah,
and just creating. So it's meant to be very chaotic. So I don't have
sure.
to think about it too much, and it's running very episodic. So it's like, I mean, they might do 2 or 3 connected adventures, and then it'll be
Mhm.
something else that might only run 2 sessions, so that's how I'm kind of, trying to break it down so that if someone can't make it, then
Sure.
we can just roll with something else, and that's not quite a hex crawl,
Yeah.
but similar to that, very episodic.
Yeah,
Um,
I definitely wanna try and run, like a big, multi-genre, um, multi-universe type of crazy campaign with A&A. That's my goal
yeah,
anyway. I gotta
yeah.
find time.
I always thought that Dolman Wood was already out. I guess.
Dolman Wood, I
Yeah, I
think,
didn't back it, so
some of the PDFs I think are
mm,
out. I've gotten some of
yeah,
those. I believe I backed the print edition of that, and I don't know where that is. My Kickstarter is like a mess. I've got problems.
yeah. I just dumped. I just backed
I
the Shadow
saw, yeah.
Dart. I Shadow Dart and Gygax, in
Yeah.
the same day. So I'm like, I'm done for quite a
Yeah.
while. So
Yeah.
that's not going to be anything on my radar for, maybe in the summertime I'll be like, okay, now I have some breathing room and maybe I can pick up something. Like the next game I get,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm going to pick up Dragon Slayer,
Yeah.
at your
Yeah.
convention. So that will most likely be, if I can control myself, uh,
It's great.
that
Yeah,
will
well,
most
that's
likely
smart,
be
yeah.
my next purchase. So I'm not purchasing
Yeah.
anything until June, and go
Yeah.
with that. Um,
Good luck with that. That's
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm gonna give it a real try.
yeah.
Not to break down and pick up anything. Um, I know that. Well, I'm still waiting on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I
Oh,
want to run that.
yes.
So I don't
Yep.
know when.
I
That came out by
backed that
now,
too.
but Palladium Books is notoriously slow with
Yep.
releasing
Yep.
stuff. So that's Shadow Dark will probably come out
Yeah.
before that is fulfilled. So
Um, yeah, I backed, you mentioned the Ninja Turtles, and I already have the book, and I've got a couple of the expansions for it, and it's, so, like, I backed it anyway, and
mm,
half of it's, duplicate. I backed the DC Superheroes, RPG. It's, like, from the '90s, and
right,
they're doing a re-release, and they did a Kickstarter for that, and I backed the whole thing, and
yeah,
I've got 75% of it, from when
yeah.
I bought it, you know,
Yeah.
uh, a long time ago.
Hey Matthew, I didn't get it yet.
The
That's at
Dragon
my
Main
local
box set.
gaming shop.
Did
So
I get
that
that?
is at my local gaming shop. No, no. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is Palladium still has the copyright for it, so they can release
Yeah,
it.
and it's basically just a re-release as far as I know. I don't know if
Yes,
they
yeah,
cleaned any. I think they just cleaned up and
yeah,
did some of that.
yeah,
Maybe some new art, I think,
yes,
but I don't think they've actually changed the game. It's still on their Palladium system,
yes,
and I think it's mostly just a reprint.
yeah.
So
Yeah. I think it's just a republication virtually.
yeah,
They're just and that's the same thing with like the Troll Lord Games. What they're doing with the Gygax estate stuff
yeah,
is, they're just changing the formatting of it, changing the layout,
yeah,
tightening up the crispiness of the text and all that kind of stuff. So they're
sure,
just making visual, improvements and flow improvements, art as well, new covers and cleaned up editing. Yeah. Yeah, so
yeah,
I don't think they run into the same copyright issues when they're just republishing what they already had access
yeah,
to. So
yeah. And I don't remember if they're doing the add-on books and all of that. They had like
they had the two that were there. Yes,
um
I haven't looked at the
they did.
Kickstarter
Okay,
in
that's
ages.
what.
You
Yeah,
know, I'd
right.
have to
Me
go
either.
back
That's
and
why I
look
don't
and
remember.
see. But I think they do have a couple of those other books that they had at
Yeah,
the
there was
time
like
that
one
were
was like after the bomb or something, I think,
yeah.
and then there was a
Um,
couple. I can't remember the names, but I know I have
Yeah.
a couple of them. Yeah,
No, actually, wasn't after the bomb what
or
they had to
something.
call the game system when they stopped the publication of it? That was the
Um.
that was the BX version of it, right? Wasn't that the copyright free version of it?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, after the bomb,
Yeah,
I think is
maybe
what it became known as when they no
after.
longer had the rights to it.
Okay,
You know,
I'll have to see because I
copyright
think I
was
have that book somewhere.
yeah, yeah, the
But yeah,
non-TMT mutant stuff they never stopped making, yeah. Um, it's just the TMT rights lapsed.
yeah,
That's correct, yeah. So,
yeah.
so let's get back to something you mentioned earlier,
Uh-oh.
back to the conventions and everything. So when someone's setting up a miniatures game, how is that different, in
Yeah,
scheduling and space and all? I would think that
that's
it's
a
a
that's
totally
a great question. That's
yeah.
a great question. I'm super glad that you asked,
Mhm.
a week after I actually sat down and figured it out instead of being the first one to ask me about
Mhm.
it live on
Mhm.
camera. So thanks for that.
Mhm.
Um, so what we decided to do is the obviously the hotel we're doing it at, I'm not buying, tables and stuff, so I'm kind of working with what they have available.
Right.
The hotel has 6-foot diameter round tables, banquet tables, and
Mhm.
that's what we're using for all the RPGs in the
Right.
in the main ballroom because that's good enough. You could put 8 people around it, and
Mhm.
that's generally what ends up getting used anyway. For the miniatures games, I had some people submit some things, and they were requesting 2 tables, and so I kind of tried to follow up with that, and we basically decided that 1 table for a miniatures game would be 2 of the 6-foot rectangular tables, so, like,
Okay.
6 foot by 30 inches,
Mhm.
side by
Side by side,
side,
yeah. Yeah.
and then I'm gonna have some tables along the wall where people can kinda store, you know, terrain and, like, minis and kinda things like that.
Mhm.
So, we'll have an area that'll be, basically 5 foot by 6 foot for playing, and then there'll be 6 foot, tables, on the side to store stuff, and that seems to be, what will work out, for
Right.
everybody. But yeah, I mean, I agree with like there's some people that mentioned, the round tables. I didn't think of it first, but you can't really play like a miniatures game you can on a round table, but it's
If
you're
it's
you're
a if
better
it's
off
a
with a
skirmish if it's a skirmish
sure,
game, you
yeah,
can. Yeah,
yeah,
but not one of those full battlefield
right,
things, with 16 different players, around the same
yeah,
table.
right, right.
That doesn't work.
So
Um,
yeah, yeah,
so yeah, because I was thinking of it as well. I was like, yeah, you do kind of need rectangular tables,
yeah, hmm,
for wargaming and probably putting them side by side, like you mentioned, just to get the
yeah,
width that you kind of need for that kind
yeah,
of thing as well. Because I know most like miniature convention places, they're almost exclusively miniature conventions,
yeah,
so like
right,
Historicon or things like that. I mean, they might have some side tables for
yeah, yeah,
tabletop RPGs, but they're like 90-10, split towards the miniatures
sure,
gaming as opposed to tabletop role playing,
yeah,
and then you get conventions that are the exact opposite. Like,
yep,
they're probably
sure,
90-10 the other direction. And then some of the more mid-sized to larger size cons, then they have big contingents of board gaming that are going
yeah,
on, which again, you can pull off most board gaming, I would think, on the circular round tables and the round tables
right,
anyway.
right.
But then some others you might not be able to, or those tables might be too big actually for some
It's
board games
interesting.
too. Yeah,
Yeah. It depends on the size of the
yeah,
game and how many players and everything else because I've seen, you know, you get these 6-foot diameter round tables, and
yeah.
if you're playing like a card game and everybody's got their own little tableau and you gotta be
Right.
able to see what somebody else has, forget it. You can
Yeah,
see,
you
what's
can't reach
next to
over.
you.
Yeah, you can't reach
Um,
over to move your piece on the
yeah,
Monopoly board, let's
yeah,
say.
right. Or yeah,
Oh,
a
it's
Monopoly
like,
board,
hey,
and
can you
once you get past the side that's nearest to you,
yeah,
you need to get
yeah,
you
somebody
need to
else.
get one of
Hey, can you move my piece 6 places? Yeah.
you get the craps arm there they use at the casino to grab the dice,
Mhm.
to push your miniature around the
Yeah,
table there.
not to mention any terrain generation that needs to take place would be a nightmare. Might skip
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh
might
boy.
DM screen.
Here's a debate for a video for
Yeah,
a separate video.
yeah,
Is
skipping the DM screen.
skipping the DM screen. How do you feel about that?
I
What's your take?
I even if I'm not using the DM screen, I put the DM screen up because I do my rolls all public anyway, you
Sure,
know.
me too.
So
Absolutely.
I only have the DM screen there to cover my notes that I'm taking. Like if I'm keeping track of the hit points of the monster they currently fighting, or I'll
Yeah,
sometimes have the adventure, even if it's my own adventure, kind of
sure.
written out in front of me there, and that's what the screen is doing. So that's the first thing. So I use a DM screen just to cover my notes and my thing. I'm not rolling behind it. Unless I want to make my players nervous, and I just start rolling dice and see where just they get that sound going. But the other
I
reason why,
never do that.
yeah,
Never. I
yeah,
never do
yeah.
that.
The other reason why I like to do it, and this is going to probably might sound kind of silly, is that I'm using it to advertise the game that I'm running. So
That's a great point.
and that's because I really do think about the aesthetic of
Yeah,
your table, and I think about the passersby, and I want them to see, hey, that looks like a really interesting game. And
yeah,
so, and the screen is one thing, very artistic.
sure,
Screen is going to grab them into. I like to put a
absolutely.
map on, even if the map has nothing to do with the game system that it came with. Like
Yeah,
I use the Hyborian map that I got for the Age of Conan. And when
mhm,
I'm running Shadow Dark set in the Hyborian Age, that's the map I have out on the table. So when someone walks by, they'll see this map out. That's obviously Robert E. Howard's Hyborian Age map. And then they'll see I have
yeah,
Shadow Dark and I have coins. I picked up these coins for the
catches the
tokens
eye,
instead, and just
catches the eye.
everything
Yeah,
for the purpose of catching the eye. And the screen
yeah.
is something that does that as well. So I'm a proponent of game screen at a convention table.
I got to tell you, I'm going to tell you a secret. You can't tell anybody this.
Okay.
So when I'm running a one shot, obviously at home, I use a DM screen all the time because I have my notes and everything back there.
Right.
But when I run a one shot,
Mhm.
I use a DM screen exclusively so that the players can't see that I have nothing behind it because I don't want them to know that I'm just making the stuff up as I go.
But hey, you know what? That's another thing. Like when you're running a hex crawl, that's basically what you're doing. You're running it off the top of your
Yeah.
head. I was sitting right next to Frank Mentzner when he was running his game. And
Yeah.
like I said, it was only rolling 2d6. And I couldn't imagine what system he was actually using. I think that it might have just been like if he rolls pairs, that's one thing. If he rolls odd, that's another. If he rolls even, that's another thing.
Yeah.
And all it just kind of seemed was that, you had a 33% chance of dying no matter what, whenever he
Yeah.
was rolling
Right.
something,
Right.
and maybe a slight chance if he rolled doubles where you'd have some kind of a brilliant success. But other than that, there was nothing written, nothing,
Sure.
just
Sure.
all from the top of his head. And it was one of the most interesting adventures that I've actually run through as a player. It was really detailed and just amazing that he was going off the top of his 77-year-old head, which
Yeah.
is just
Yeah.
mind-boggling too. And so, um, yeah, it's like if you're going to be running things, you have to be super flexible,
Yeah,
especially in convention play, you have to be very flexible. Prep, not plan. Keep on
yeah,
going back and forth with that.
yeah.
Um,
You got to have an important thing, I think, for convention games is that you have to have your beginning and your kind of end, and then everything in the middle. You got to be able to just rewrite on the fly, or disappear it, due to time or whatever. I think that's kind of important.
I'm going to get back to Project TX-77s,
Sure.
but you know what this reminds me of, Teresa, is Giant Lands, where if you wear a costume to play Giant Lands, you get mechanical bonuses in the game.
Really?
Not that I'm supporting that system at all. I mean that was a freaking disaster. Giant Lands was the one that came out of that was a whole thing with TSR, new TSR, and um,
Yeah.
yeah, that whole fiasco with that. But it's a horrible system, an unplayable system, and that had that kind of thing too. But then again, I might not like LARPers. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you might be accused of being a LARPer, and that's kind of a weird place.
In
Um,
my previous game room, I had a no LARPing sign,
yeah,
that hung behind me. So
yeah,
I'm gonna have to figure out where that went and
yeah.
hang it in here.
Yeah, so let's get to here. So this question here.
Yeah.
So when you GM con games, do you ever flub rolls in the PC's favor to move the game along? Uh,
No.
no.
No
Oh my,
flubbing dice rolls.
I roll my dice in front of them so they can see. The only thing that I will admit that I change is I will change the hit points of the creature that they are fighting. All right. To either extend it if I see that they're chewing through a boss too fast, and it's not having that cinematic,
Sure.
punch that it's supposed to have. Um, and I typically will not. I try not to have a total party wipe. You know, so there's sometimes that if they're rolling the dice and it's hard to avoid. Like I said, I had those 4-player characters out of 7 die on
Sure.
uh, you know, one geographic hazard. They were flowing off an ice bridge, into a chasm, and I was like, I did not prepare for, well, what if they're really upset that they're almost at the end, and their characters, there's nothing set up. So that's the only thing that I'd have to prepare differently for.
Sure.
But that's never happened before, and I tend not to have total party wipes. But my players are usually like convention players. Again, that's just like a variable that you can't plan on. You might get players that just you
Yeah.
know that just throw themselves off. Like one of my players actually threw himself to his own death. He was like, no, I'm
Wow.
not going to take any of the hints or any of the things like that. I'm just going to walk across this ice bridge. There's rope down there. I was like, do you want to like maybe try to hold on to the rope that's already? Nah, I'm just going to walk. And he had no more
Yeah.
tokens to
Yeah.
re-roll or anything like that, and he just died. So I don't even count that one as a legitimate "that's on me" kind of
Sure. Sure.
thing. But yeah, I like Roger said, I like to roll in front of them. I might tweak things a little bit just to kind of for the purpose of
Yeah.
just the cinematic aspect of it, make it more interesting or whatnot, but not really to alter the dice,
I
in
think
a real way.
I think that it's worth it to say that I mean, I don't know if this is considered flubbing, so maybe maybe the chat can shed some light on this, but like I won't ask for a roll specifically if it's something to keep the game like moving along,
Yeah.
especially in like a convention game. Like if there's a door, there's a locked door or whatever in a room, like I'm not gonna make if the thief says, "Hey, I'm gonna like try and unlock the door," I just say, "Okay, they unlock the door." Like,
Yeah.
because what are you gonna do? You're gonna make them roll on it, and then they fail the roll, and then now the fighter's got to try and kick it, and then he fails the roll, and now it's like, okay, and I think you just kind of you're just spending time at that point, and then what happens if they all fail? Man, they can't get through the door,
Well, you
and
always have the universal lock. Lock pick is the mall. Or you
sure,
know,
sure,
hey, I have a battle axe. Can I just wail on the
yeah.
door
Can
with the
I just
battle
get
axe?
this
Sure,
over?
you can wail on the
But
door with the battle axe, and
right,
it'll take you this, and I roll this many rounds. That'll take you to
sure,
scramble through it,
sure,
and then I'll do a random encounter. Because you're just making a hell of a lot of noise now. And I'll probably
right,
even throw a
right.
random encounter at them just because, and that's the kind of thing. Those are the kind of rolls that I either don't make, or because I just let that happen because it makes sense, and that also keeps it makes the environment make sense. So
Yeah,
it's like, if every time the players opened up a door and they see three monsters just standing there, all right, your dungeon is not a living, breathing environment.
sure,
It's
sure.
too static. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll have them walk into an empty room and then walk into their next room, and all of a sudden there's 12 creatures, three that were used to be in the room you just walked through, and the other nine that were already in there, and now you have a totally
Yeah,
different situation that you're in. But at least they know, hey, the room that we just walked through is clear to get back through
sure,
there again in case we have to run away. So you should make your dungeons alive, and that doesn't require
sure.
rolls. That just requires thinking
Yeah,
about making your dungeon alive. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, one of the
I
best
agree.
encounters I ever had my players run into was they ran into a bunch of kobolds rolling with wheelbarrows full with shit, that they were
Oh
bringing
boy.
to the pit to dump into, and at the bottom of the pit was a green slime, and that was their sanitation
Yeah,
system in the
absolutely.
place. And they were like, after the session and everything, they're like, wow, you really thought of doing. I was like, yeah, where else are they crapping, and how are they getting rid of it?
Yeah,
Like, they're not literally living in their own crap, although some might. But I'm like, no, it has to be, when I create a dungeon that's a lair, they need a place where they're sleeping, a place where
sure.
they're going to the bathroom, a place where they're eating, and storage, and just standard storage. Not every room is an armory, not everything is,
Yeah,
you have to make it a living, breathing place. And people are wandering all over the place. They're not just static in rooms. So that's another thing to remember at a convention as well, is make the thing work, just constantly changing, constantly rolling, and
yeah,
constantly responding to what the player characters are doing. Fireballs make a lot of noise, when they go off. I
yeah,
treat them
sure.
like, everyone's going to hear a woof, or casting lightning bolts. I always attach, like, the lightning bolt isn't just the light. I throw the thunder behind it too. It's got to have some sound effect to it. And so yeah, keep your place alive.
Yeah.
Uh, how much prep work do you do for a con game?
Wow. That's
I'll
a
let you tackle that
that's a
one
great
first.
question. That's a great question. That's difficult, right? So like for me, like I don't really I just kind of pick something and run with it generally now. So it's usually a short kind of prep time. I spend more time trying to figure out what miniatures I'm going to bring, if any, or what monsters I want to throw in, like so I have kind of representatory things. Like that's what I spend the time on. But a lot of that is just because I've ran enough one shots over the years to just
Right,
kind of that I've got stuff memorized. I mean, when you've run the same module 20, 30 times, it's like
right,
you can, you don't need it in front of you. There's no amount of prep. You're not going to read
right.
through it and say, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that," because who cares? It's a one shot. You're just
Yeah, yeah,
gonna go through it. So I guess my answer is 30 years. I guess of
yeah, yeah. I
prep.
was going to say initially a lot, and then,
Yeah,
like you said, once
yeah,
you're running that same adventure a couple of times, and I try not to run them. The only reason why I ran Shards of Ymir 7 times was the first 3 times I ran it with Conan 2D20, and then the last 4 I ran it with Shadow Dark. So there was some of a bit of a learning curve for me in running it when I switched systems. I had to create a few things for the Shadow Dark game to work the same way that it worked for the Conan 2D20.
Sure.
And then, now when I run it, I think your convention might be the last time that I run that adventure.
Oh boy.
Because that'll be the 8th time that I'm running it, and actually, yours will be the 9th time that I'm running it.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm running it again at ShireCon, so I'm going to run that 10 times. So
10 times.
that is going to be what do we say? Retired, in 2025, and then I'll write a new one for 2026, and then run that probably 5 times, and then I'm going to get down to just doing it like maybe 5. If I do 5 conventions, I'll run it 5 times, and that's it.
It's interesting. I've run a number of modules multiple times, and it's really interesting to see how different groups handle different situations, and have a completely different outcome on things. I really enjoy that part.
Yeah, and that's uniform, and that's across all different game systems. Like I had the same thing with Gangbusters BX. All right, I wrote an adventure for it. I ran that about 7 times, and I was like, wow, it's like there's been at least 5 different conclusions to this, and the other 2, they were nuanced, but they still ended up with the same end result. And I was like, it's a so it goes across different systems. You're just dealing with different people that are going to play the game differently, and unless it's an absolute railroad, you're going to get different outcomes every time.
Sure, absolutely. And I love seeing that. I love seeing it happen. Yeah.
All right.
I can understand that to a certain point of view, but I think you really need to run an adventure, maybe a half a dozen times or so, and see what people do. And I knew you said you're running yours 10 times. But I think that's a great number. It's a great, especially if you're creating something and having to make changes to it and modifying it, because you really need to know, what you need to change.
And good night, Teresa, as well. Yeah, it's different because you're running it with different players. Believe me, it really is a different experience because every single table is different. Like, so the next time I run Shards of Ymir, I wouldn't like Ducato played in that adventure already. I wouldn't have Ducato play it again. I wouldn't suggest that he plays it again. I won't kick him off the table if I have an empty seat. But again, he already knows what experience to expect from that adventure. It's not going to be that dramatically different from from the last time that he ran through it.
Sure.
Unless he just plays a total back seat to what everybody else is doing, and he's just a human dice roller. And I don't want anybody to be in that kind of a position where I kind of know where this is going. I'm just going to see what everybody else is doing. That would be a waste of his time. So it's it is a different experience every time you run a game with different people.
I had a buddy of mine run Tomb of Horrors at a convention, and I was in the game, and I've ran it. I'm very familiar with it. And basically that's all I did is I'm going to play this dumb fighter.
Yeah.
You guys point and I'll punch. Like that's, and that's how I played the character, because I didn't want to say, I know what all this stuff is. That's no fun,
Right.
No.
Yeah.
So I kind of went through it that way.
Yeah. Anytime I run an official adventure module, I always change it up anyway. Now, I never
Sure,
run it
sure,
straight up. Yeah, there's, you will be surprised. It's like
sure.
even if you've run it a few times, when I'm running it, you're going to have totally different stories in some cases. I mean, some of the mundane encounters and everything might remain the same, but it's going to be a different experience than what you might have already had.
I
Um,
used to run, a Star Wars, game that was kind of like an ongoing, one shot at a game store, and it was I ran through the movies, the original 4, 5, and 6,
mhm,
right, from the stormtroopers' point of
right.
view, and so it was basically a funnel. They were all, had one hit die, and there was
Yeah.
just a whole bunch of them, and, so they would just die in, like,
Mhm.
ridiculous things, and we were playing, and so it's when they're on, Tatooine, and I had one guy in the group that keeps yelling, "We gotta go to 94, docking bay 94, that's where it is, we need to go there," and I'm like, "Dude, play through the adventure,"
Yeah.
and he's like, "No, this
Not
we
the
have to
movie.
go
Yeah.
there, we have to go there," and it's like, "Come on, man."
Yeah.
So,
So,
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
so getting back to the convention.
Yeah, sure.
So your bad sales, how's the bad sales? I don't want an exact number, but just,
We're I think from where my numbers are, and where we're at with games and uh, registration and the vendor situation and all that, and talking to other conventions, I think we're on track for about 200 people.
wow. All right, so
So
that's bigger than I was
that's
expecting.
that's
That's really good.
yeah. And we'll see. We'll see. According to a bunch of other convention coordinators, talking to Ron and whatnot,
Mm,
we uh he says like 2 months. When you hit the 2 month mark, that's when the curve starts to go up and you'll really see
okay.
where we're at. So we'll see.
Also,
Yeah,
that's really, really good.
yeah.
Um,
Um yeah, I think he was in the Project X-77
yeah.
is a guy local to me.
Oh,
He he's a
and they
buddy of
killed the
mine. He
princess.
he
They
comes over.
can store
They
away.
Yeah, in the stormtrooper thing,
Yeah.
yeah, they came across Princess Leia and somebody had a thermal detonator and threw her in
And
the
blew her
room,
up.
and so was interesting.
That's cool. So let's see. Railroading modules are a little boring to run over and over, but more sandbox style ones are awesome to
Sure.
run repeatedly because the DM is amazing how different each time is. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's a you know again you're treating it like it's a you've prepared the module, but you're not planning the module out.
sure.
So you have to just throw different curves in there. If you start realizing that your players, hey, my players know this module back and forth, I can't
Yeah.
tell you how many times I've run Keep on the Borderlands over the last 45 years or so.
Yeah,
And I have
yeah,
players that, I had players going through one of my players worked at TSR, in 1982, so he was there for the red box, and so played through it then, with Gary running it, so it
yeah,
was like I
yeah.
kind of know that you're gonna have to change up a lot of the things. Like I changed up everything about the Caves of Chaos. Like there were, because some
Sure.
of the things in the Caves of Chaos just didn't make sense. It was like, no, why would a Medusa be here and this be there or that and everything? Why are all these things living in the same complex? That would normally not live within the
Yeah.
same complex. So I mean, I changed up quite a bit of it, including the whole cult that was in there, and I changed the whole
Yeah,
cult
yeah,
and that whole experience that they had in B1 actually leading up to that, because I started them off with In Search of the Unknown, and And that really became the seed that rolled out into a 2 years and 3 month long weekly campaign,
Yeah.
and it just came from just player character choices that just led to this thing that became an underlying theme that just grew organically, throughout a two
Yeah.
year and 3 month time frame. And then when we finally put like I finally got to the point where I was like, I think this is where it ends, and it made sense to end it at that point. And now in my new AD&D campaign with new players,
Hmm.
they're like 25, 30 years later, and there's going to be, you know residual from that old campaign
Yeah.
making its
Nice.
way into their campaign to kind of continue on that kind of storyline. To a certain extent, it'll be totally different for them, but there'll be like hintings of what happened in the past. And so that's more of a sandboxy kind of thing without being too railroady. I like to think of, my campaign design being almost, like 80/20, 80% kind of free flowing, let it happen as it happens,
Yeah.
and 20% just sprinkled here and there just to kind of bring them not too far off on too many different tangents at one time, and kind of bring them on in and remind them that, hey, you know what, you were supposed to do something. And now that you hadn't done it, you're hearing about the consequences of you not
Yeah.
having done it. And it kind of brings them back,
Sure.
in line again, if that's what's needed.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of good questions tonight. A
Yeah.
lot of good
Absolutely.
things there. I'm really enjoying some of these things. I know somebody brought up Teresa. I give monsters a death throw feature, so that they suddenly get stronger and less health as they have the less health that they have. Yeah, yeah, you can make them go berserk, um, and
Yeah.
bring the whole place down. Very Robert E. Howard, esque kind of thing. You kill the wizard and the tower collapses in on itself, kind of thing. Um, but yeah, what keeps running the
Yeah.
same module multiple times from being boring is it's
Yeah.
different groups. Yeah, it's
Doing it
just
for different.
different
Absolutely.
groups.
Yeah.
And you yourself as the game master have to change it up a little bit just for your
Yeah.
own, enjoyment as well. I mean, uh, we're supposed to have fun too. I know I will
Are
trigger.
we?
Yeah,
What?
I know
What
I will
is
trigger
that part
some
of it?
people into, with that statement that, yes, we are a player at the table.
What?
We're entitled to have fun as well. And and that's what it's really all about. This is all for Decado, because Decado knows
We're
exactly who I'm sending this message out to. It's like, yeah, when you're at the table, you're there to have fun. You're there to entertain your your players that are at your table at the convention. And because the last time that they want is the last thing that you want is for them to just be disappointed. And that's where we're going with that. It's
yeah.
like you need to be considerate of your players' time, and a you need to create a gaming experience for them.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure. I've tried to convince my players several times that I'm on their side and we're all in the game together, and
yeah,
and they don't believe me.
yeah. Fun not allowed at the table. Yeah, yeah. They're
Fun.
if
This
I
is a serious. This is a
Yeah.
serious
Oh, no,
recreation
no, no.
of.
There's no. Yeah. There has to be, personal growth. Everyone is supposed to walk away from the table being a better person than they were before your game session. All right. So, human growth engine.
Oh boy, here we go.
Mm.
Here's a question that's got a lot of answers.
To not have fun. Wow.
Yeah.
I'll let you
Well,
take that one first.
players play like I've kind of mentioned, players and you kind of touched on this too. Players that know the module
Mhm.
or know the thing and want to let you know that
That
they
they
know it by saying, "Hey, let's do this thing," and like trying to like spoil the fun and
Yeah,
surprise for everybody.
yeah.
Um, and and I don't want to name names or call anybody specific out, but
Mhm.
um, I'm sure that they'll know who they. I haven't seen them in the chat, so I don't think they're here.
Yeah.
Um, but somebody there will know who I'm talking about. But I had to talk to a player at my home game even
Mm.
because he was excited to know, like, as soon as I would start describing, a monster,
Mhm.
he would say what it was. And I had another guy that would like look it up, and then like it just takes some of
Yeah.
the fun out of it. So some of that stuff is, the when the people want to just say, "Oh, I know this thing, and this is this, then let's do this," and
Mm.
like you said, we joke right about sticking your head into
Yeah.
the demon
Yeah.
face, and that's a joke, but like I don't. I mean, we've talked about it. Obviously, nobody's going to
Mm.
stick their head in there. Whoever's listening, but we haven't said what it is,
Right.
exactly or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't want to spoil that
Right.
for
Exactly.
somebody,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I found out and it was
Mhm.
terrible, and I
Yeah.
want other people,
To find out it's a terrible idea. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's really not a good
yeah,
idea. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, on that say, it's not that much different than your home game, to be honest, Project TX77. Um, rules lawyers are annoying,
yeah,
and
yes,
people that want to focus on this minutia of the rules when you're in the when especially when you're in the momentum of the game. No, no, it would just roll right
sure,
over it. You know, anyone inserting non-gaming into the gaming session itself. That's
sure,
another thing that's so yeah, those are the kinds of things that would make me not have fun as the GM is that if someone is coming in there with either a purposeful or even by like not on purpose, but just um not prepared, not engaged, not paying attention, not you know, um, sitting there on their iPhone, on their phone, or whatnot, just not there. That's something else that I would be like, that's not what we're here to do. Don't waste everybody else's time, and that's something. But to be honest with you, I have, like I said, I've gone to maybe 20 conventions. So I've done over 100 game sessions. I've probably run close to 100 game sessions at conventions, and I've played in probably one third that. So maybe I've played in like 120, 130 game sessions at conventions, and um, I've never encountered a completely unprepared DM or game master, and I've never encountered disruptive players. Just never
really,
had a bad experience. Well,
really,
it's like the
wow,
yeah, I just haven't, so maybe I'm just lucky, in forming my gaming groups. Like I've only had like in my own home gaming, which has been online. It's been exclusively online since 2018 or so.
mhm,
Actually, it's been exclusively online since 2015 when I got back into the hobby. And I've only had about maybe three players that were players that are like, this guy's got to go, kind of situation. And
yeah,
that was
yeah,
it, and
yeah,
I've had 30 to 40 different players over that time frame as well. So I've been lucky. I will knock on wood. I've always been lucky with having good players, at the
Yeah.
table, and I've been lucky never to have a truly bad DM, or even an unprepared DM. At conventions, it's almost like
Wow.
it's like when you have like a C student goes to college and all of a sudden you're like a B student or even like a B
Yeah.
plus student or whatever. And what has changed? Well, you're paying to be in college. All right. You weren't paying to be in high school. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
Right.
it's the
Right.
same thing at a convention. I
Yeah.
paid to be here.
Right. So
Everybody has
generally you'll
paid
have
to
a
be
better
there.
crowd. Yeah.
So you're gonna
Yeah.
have a better crowd. No
Um,
one's there to waste their time, because their time is money.
I've had it. I've had it both ways. As a
Yeah.
GM at conventions, I've had players that have been, disruptive and, doing that stuff, trying to spoil things. And yeah, I've had that, and I've had it the other way where I've had GMs that were not prepared.
Mm,
Just I get it, right? I mean, like
yeah.
it's difficult being a GM sometimes. You're the spotlight. Everybody's staring at you, and sometimes you lock up and you don't know what to say or whatever. And I get it, but I've seen some guys really like, I don't know if they just didn't like know the module but I've been with GMs that it seems like this is the first time they're reading the
Reading it
module,
too, yeah, yeah.
and they're just like,
Mm.
"Oh, and this thing comes up to you at the fourth point. Hang on, turn the page." And and like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like they're just reading it
They're
like
reading
verbatim.
along
And
instead of just yeah, that could be
yeah,
a lack of experience or just a lack of prep, just not
sure,
prepping
sure,
right.
sure,
So yeah, I'd be more lenient towards just like getting a sense that the person is just like really nervous about it. Maybe it's their first time running at a
absolutely,
convention
yeah,
and be like,
absolutely,
oh, okay, that's an interesting thing. I can understand that. And then there's I mean, the first time I played Shadow Dark was at a convention. I ran it at a convention. First time running
hmm,
the system, ran at a convention. Now I'm an experienced game master, so
sure,
I can fudge my way through a lot of not knowing and
hmm,
just going with what seems to be right and
yeah,
put the side rules. Put the rules to the side. Oh, sorry. Put the rules to the side a little bit. Um,
sure,
but an inexperienced game master, that's why you have to be, you really do have to prep before you're running, at your
yeah,
first convention or running for your first time at a convention, and keep it real simple, and and be very flexible. And again, your only objective is to make sure that the players are engaged, and at the end they have a fun time, and you will have a fun time if they're having a fun time. You know what I'm saying? It's like, if it's all over and everybody's like, the players actually clap or something like that,
yeah, yeah,
it went well. And whether you followed the module or not doesn't even matter at that point. Whether you
yeah,
followed every single
right,
rule in the book doesn't even matter at that point. At that point, you were successful at the end. Everyone,
yeah,
had a smile on their face. They were happy. They thank you, for doing it and everything. You had a good session.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
yeah. So a player belligerently arguing with another player with me about fairly
Mhm.
ridiculous things, about like knowing how the module is supposed to run. Yeah, that's a danger
Uh-oh.
of running, known modules out there. And
It wasn't me, was it, Matt?
Yeah. Well, like I'm thinking like Alan Hammock, right? So Alan Hammock was running, Ghost Towers of Inverness, and I guarantee you he wasn't running that adventure word for word. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Mhm.
yes, he wrote it and everything, but he wrote it
Sure,
40 years ago. I
sure.
doubt that he sits there, I doubt that he prepped beforehand. he kind of knows what the general
Yeah.
sense of it was, and he ran us through it. So if someone wanted to rules lawyer him over running his own adventure, which would have been the height of like freaking balls, you know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
like,
Right.
but I guarantee you, he had no, like, he wasn't sticking to the exact line for line of what the adventure was supposed to run like. Um, so Decado brings up rules lawyers. I had rules lawyers in my group when I ran games at an FLGS. You're going to see it more there.
Yeah.
Again, convention play, you have the monetary and the time frame. Like, I have this 4 hour slot that I have booked, and so if this doesn't work out for me, what am I going to do for the next 3 hours, or something
Yeah.
like that? You know what I'm saying? That's the thing that comes into the consideration. Then in a lot of these, a lot of conventions, especially the bigger ones, they'll have like you're paying to play in that game because they'll usually have like I want to say like a donation kind of thing that's going on. The word just slipped my mind. Charity. They have charity games like Frank Metzler's games are all charity games, and
Yeah.
so you're paying to play in it as well, and you're going to come with a different attitude when you're paying to play.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. I think, I think on, on that, I generally, if I've run at a game store and I have people come in, I generally let them know right off the get go, hey, this is, we're running a stripped down version of the rules
mhm,
to simplify things because we're trying to get, new players to play and whatnot. And generally people are okay with that,
yeah,
and you might get called out on some things, but I
mm,
mean, yeah, I don't know. Once you understand the system and how it works, and you kind of know, where your boundaries are, where you can kind of
right,
push things. So
yeah. Yeah, well, Gen Con doesn't have a big Gen Con does not have a great reputation for running games anyway. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't. It doesn't have
yeah,
like I'm sure at those smaller private games that they have, where all of the well-known people are all playing at the same tables and everything, those are probably fine. And I
yeah,
guarantee you they're not following the rules as written and the adventures as written either. They're probably, they're probably laughing their asses off through the whole thing and just joking around and everything. A totally different mindset than if you're approaching an adventure more seriously, like you would in a home game. So yeah, having tough experiences with GMs at Gen Con where they obviously running games that they didn't know in exchange for the
yeah,
badge. That's something that's just um, I think that's a big con issue, more
yeah.
so than a smaller con, that more um, and an OSR con
I
as
could see it
well.
happening. Yeah,
Yeah,
I could definitely see that happening, and
yeah,
there's no real way to prevent that.
yeah.
You can't really police it. You can't say, "Oh, hey, uh, security. Oh, this guy's this guy's not a good GM.
Mhm.
Let's
Yeah,
revoke his badge."
yeah. So good advice to someone who's playing in a con game for the first time.
Oof.
Um, Roll with that one, Roger.
Oh boy, you throw this one on me. Let's see. Um, show up 10 minutes early, 15 minutes early.
If
I
you can.
generally show
If
up
you
like
can.
20
Yeah,
minutes early if I can. You're right.
yeah,
Generally, games are
yeah,
back to back. You got 10
yeah.
minutes. It's like being in high school. The buzzer rings and you got to get to the
You
other
got two
side.
minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. But no, get there as early as you can. Like, I
yeah.
mean, I would say 15 minutes. I generally try and be like 20 minutes, half hour early even. Um, show up with dice, a
Mhm,
pencil,
mhm.
something to write on. I mean, maybe I'm being too,
Yeah.
too much here, but I generally always have, like I said, I'll put index cards out and pencils, and I always got a couple Sharpies on me. Um,
Mm,
when I run or whatever. But yeah, generally if you show up with dice, maybe, you know, research the system a little bit even before you're gonna play it. Like, even if you're gonna play something brand new, um, I always like to try and look at it and say, "Okay, what kind of system is it? Is it like a," especially like the tone of it, I think is important to know, um, going in, whether this is something that's, a humorous thing or if it's more gritty or whatnot,
Right.
Um, and I mean, and that's all. And I think you gotta be open to what everybody else wants to do. I'm not saying that completely, like, shut out everything you wanna do and go along with the group,
Mhm.
but, like, everybody's coming to the table with a different idea and a different thing,
Mm.
and it's very difficult when you've got, 5 people at a table and, they wanna go in 6 different directions and, so it's you kinda gotta make some be prepared to make some sacrifices there and kinda just go with things. I know that's my opinion. What do you got? What do you think?
Um,
Or am I asking too
First
much
thing,
of people?
no, no. I would say first of all, go there with the expectation that the experience at a convention table is going to be very different than what your home game is like. So that's number one. Going there with a different set of expectations, and be okay with the fact that you might not have any expectations because you've never done it before. So that's the first thing. Second thing, and Roger touched on some of these as well. Yeah, go there prepared. Go there with at least a set of dice, something to write with, something to write on. If you have a little notepad or whatever. Next thing, say hello to everybody at the table. Get comfortable with everybody sitting at the table. Introduce yourself. Listen to what everybody else is saying. You know, listen to the game master when the game master should be giving you some kind of expectations. What
Yeah,
you can expect from him or her as the game master. They should tell you a little bit about the game system. Provide you, like I said, real earlier on, provide you with some of the basic rules of the game system in case this is a brand new system for you, and they should assume that it is. And so just go over there. If you're not creating a character, if you're getting a character that is a pre-gen, um, either it's your first time at a convention, maybe a first time at a table, try to play something that you're most comfortable with playing so you don't have to think too much about it. And then later on, you can experiment. So yeah, just take it step by step and then just engage in what's going on at the table. If you do those things, you should have a fairly good time and you'll become more comfortable with it. And then by the time you go into your second table and your second, maybe even a different game system, you're going to see that there's
yeah,
many different common, best practices, for a player when you're going to these tables. Then once you've done it a couple times, you know, by your second or certainly by your third convention, you really should be ready to run at least one session. Don't go crazy with it. Find a session that you're super familiar with, and that you're fairly certain people will want to play, and then run that for just one session. Do not make the mistake like I made 2 conventions ago, where I went in there with 5 different game systems, and even though I knew them really well, the stress of running 5 different game systems was overwhelming. Especially over 2 days. I ran 5 different game
sure.
systems over 2 days. Plus, I played 2 or 3 other game sessions. And so it was a monster. So that's the other thing when you go to a convention for the first time, do not overwhelm yourself with
Yeah,
the number of game sessions. Leave yourself some gaps in between where you can take a mental breather from everything as well.
yeah. I would say if you're gonna run games, I would run the same system and run different modules in it.
Yeah.
Instead of running multiple things. I know Matt will have something to say on that because
Yeah.
he runs like 5 different games game systems at the conventions,
Yeah.
and
Let's see what
and
Matt
I
would.
love him for it.
Yeah.
I love his games.
I've had some of
Um,
my all-time best and all-time worst
yeah,
experiences at Con. Yeah.
yeah, I
Uh,
bet. Yeah,
Play
yeah.
DCC at Con. Seriously, the players and the judges are so into the game.
It's I used to play a lot of DCC. I used to run a lot of it, and stuff. And no, DCC is great for a convention game, and I don't mind it. I play with some of these guys, and they're
Mm,
great. But also, like, if you're gonna play a DCC game, it's important to note that it's crazy. It's gonna get
mm,
crazy, and sometimes, I want to play a game that is more serious, you know,
mhm.
which is why I'll kind of gravitate toward like the AD&D games and stuff run by the
Right.
guys who've been running it, because
Yeah.
then you're going to have more of a serious game, um, you know. But I mean,
Call of
that's my
Cthulhu as
opinion.
well. And I bet you Alien RPG
Sure,
is probably a serious damn game as well. It's
sure,
like,
yeah,
um,
absolutely.
and actually,
Like the Alien,
Blade
y-
Runner is a serious game as well.
it
That's
is.
not a game that's like, oh, we're gonna have, fun time and uh, blowing bubbles
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. No,
Um,
it's a pretty gritty game.
Matt, I see your last point there where you
Mhm.
mentioned bringing candy to the table,
Yes. Yeah.
and I disagree. I think you need to bring candy for the GM,
Yeah. Well, I, as
especially
a
if
GM, brought candy to the table.
it's
I brought a
me.
whole bag of Jolly Ranchers, and I was like, I was like, yeah, have at it. You can have Jolly Ranchers yeah, at the
Yeah.
table. Anything to keep your throat a little moist because you're talking for 3 to 4 hours. So it's
Oh yeah,
yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
yeah, that's the other big prep thing is be prepared
Lozenges,
to lose your
lozenges.
yeah
Yeah.
to lose your voice after 2.5 days or however long a convention is. Solid advice. I did that at page 2, running 5 different
Yeah.
game systems, and my brain was melted by something. Yeah, yeah. No, it is. It is. Yeah. Do not run too many different game systems. I don't care how familiar you are with them. You could be a master of them. You will be
Yeah.
burned out at the end of that convention.
I
Um,
mean, unless they're really similar, if they're all D20 based, if you're gonna run like Shadow Dark and
yeah,
BX, or
yeah.
all
Well,
the
it was the
D20 stuff.
luggage. They took a whole luggage by themselves, because I ran this is
Yeah.
what I ran. I ran Conan 2D20. All right.
Mhm.
So that's a pretty
Yep.
hefty hardcover, along with all its specialty dice and the GM
Yep.
screen and all that crap. Then I ran the Blade Runner. All right,
Mhm.
whole separate box set. All right. Then I ran Gangbusters BX. All right, my own adventure. So I knew the adventure left and right, obviously. I ran that first one. That was the first time I ran Shadow Dark. All right. And then I ran my fifth game system was I'm slipping my mind what the fifth one was. I'd have to go back and look at Rising Phoenix 2023 to remember what that fifth one was.
Mhm.
Um, but it was overwhelming. It literally was overwhelming. So yeah, I do not recommend running. Um, Really, I'm at the point now where it's like I don't want to run more than 3 and 1 per day, and I like to slot them as evening games. That
Mhm.
way, if you can go a little bit longer, except for the Sunday game. The Sunday game I slotted for as early as possible
Sure.
so that I can get out of there.
Yeah.
But whether it's a Friday night and a Saturday night, those are always evening games.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Takata, you have a good one too. Yeah, I'm going to be wrapping this
Yeah,
up
take care.
because we're rolling up on an hour and 45 already. So, so convention wise, everything sounds good, right? It's looking like it's going to, like I said, I'm surprised it's as big as it sounds.
I mean, here's hoping. I
Really
mean,
cool.
you know,
Yeah.
so far from where everything is to where other people have been and where they are and stuff, everything, you know, and I've been talking to a bunch of different you know, convention coordinators and stuff, and they all say, no, 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 you're fine, you're fine, you're right where you should be, and everything's, you
Yeah.
know, so I'm gonna trust them because they've
Mhm.
done this before.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, everything seems like it's going well, you know. It's a little nerve-wracking, obviously, running,
Mm.
you know, convention first time. Want to make sure
Right.
everything's perfect. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of screw ups and everything, and you know, hopefully we can just get better at
Mhm.
everything that uh, you know, that goes in ways that we don't expect or whatever. So yeah, so yeah, good time, you know. Yeah, thanks
Yep.
Matt.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks a lot. And yeah, it should be a great time and 91 days away. So, looking forward to it. And, if you want to, of course, we can do this again just before the con, and welcome to come on in and say, hey, you know what, it's next week, and this is what it's got, what it's really shaping
Yeah,
up to be like. This is what you can expect for any of that last minute, bad sales that might be taking place.
yeah, and this is fun too. I mean, just hanging out and chatting,
Oh yeah,
you know,
yeah,
about RPGs and gaming. I mean,
mhm,
I can go on forever about
yeah,
that
yeah.
stuff. So even if you just want to chat about that, I'm down. Or if you're
Oh
just,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. If I'm doing
just here for
yeah,
the
my
con.
next live stream is going to be on March 31st. So
Uh-huh.
so that's the
Sure.
next live stream, and actually that one, Fred Quenzer for AutoCon here in
Mhm.
Pleasant Valley in June, the weekend before your
Cool.
convention. He's going to be here on that one. So yeah,
Cool.
definitely join in, and you're welcome to join in. I'll invite
Yeah.
you in on that chat if you want, and
That'd be
yeah,
cool. Yeah.
so that'll be March 31st, and I'm pretty sure that's around. Yeah, because I'm off that day, so that'll probably be around like the 7:45 slot as well. I'll check
Okay.
my thread again, but I think that'll be around the
Yeah.
7:45 slot. That seems to be a good slot.
Yeah. Fantastic.
All right.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, and then the week after that, I'll be in Pennsylvania. I'll be in a couple of Matt's games
Oh, cool.
the weekend following of that. I don't remember I think I'm in a mothership game of his
I've been
and
waiting to play that game. I haven't,
something else.
but I haven't played it yet. You
We
know,
uh we did I know you're trying to wrap up here,
no,
so
it's
if you
fine.
don't want me to tell the story. But we played in one of Matt's games and I got like a worker. It's like a union worker type of guy. I forget, to repair a guy or whatever to fix stuff.
Mhm.
And here's this that we're going through this module, and it was Matt was just phenomenal. It was just awesome.
Mhm.
And we had a list of things to accomplish, like fix a toilet and like just all this ridiculous stuff. And there's all this crazy stuff going on, and people are trying to like there's some cult, and I mean it's a whole thing. And through the entire thing, I'm just like, "Oh, I gotta get in there to fix this toilet." Like, I'm just going through the list and just being the guy, you know, just I'm gonna fix all this stuff. And I had a blast with that. It was awesome. It was awesome. So thanks for that, Matt. And this at MEPA, he's running, I think it's the sequel to that or the
Oh, cool.
next step from there. So I can't wait to be involved in that and see what kind of crazy shenanigans that we get into.
Well,
But
good luck with that.
it's a blast, yeah. So, yeah, fantastic.
Okay,
No,
everyone.
thanks for having me on.
Yep, yep. Thanks for being on, and thanks
Yeah.
everyone for your comments and everything. Yeah, it was a great discussion. We had a lot of different things come up, and great to hear about the con and how everything's
Yeah.
shaping up, and really looking forward to it. So you all have a good one, everyone. And again, Roger, thanks a lot. And I'm going to end this.